Hello and welcome to the King Fox channel. My name is Matt Conager and I'm building a Kit Fox Model 7 STI. On the previous episode I did a little bit of an introduction, and on this episode I'm going to be focusing a little bit more on buying and building a kit, whether it's experimental, amateur, or scratch built, but in this case more focused on the kits. So what does it take to build a kit? Well, you need to be motivated. You'd have to have a little desire and a little bit of money. What type of kit will you be building? They're going to be, like I said before, amateur, experimental, again the scratch built, but I don't know if I consider a scratch built amateur because it takes a lot of skill. I think you're doing much more of the work yourself, following a set of plans and templates and building an airplane. So I'm going to be focusing more on kits today. Experimental, amateur, those things sound a little bit scary to a lot of people. I know when I first had my other airplane, the Mall, people were talking to me about experimentals, and I thought, that sounds dangerous, or experimental. Well, the truth is it's just more of a definition of how the airplane is used, and the definition of that is basically an aircraft that's used for non-commercial use or recreational purposes, such as education or personal use, and that's exactly what I'll be using my airplane for, personal use. And recreation, not so much educational, but if I can educate someone with the airplane, I'll certainly do that. These aircraft are all airworthy proven. There's a ton of kits out there. I think for Kit Fox there's upwards of 7,000. The numbers keep going up. Now hopefully I'll add a number to that in the near future. All the airplanes are built to a certain specification. Those specifications are given out in the build log by the manufacturer, so you follow those guidelines and put the airplane together how you're supposed to, and it's going to be just as airworthy as any other aircraft that's certificated. How old do you have to be? You can start as young as you want. Are there age limits to fly? Yes, and I'll touch on that a little bit later. You need to have a little bit of tool knowledge, screwdrivers, reamers, pliers, etc. I didn't know what a reamer was or a deburrer before I got into this line of work, so I'm learning, but it's pretty simple. Get on YouTube, look up reaming and deburring, and you can watch many people do some good videos and show you exactly what to do. And it's definitely something that was within my skill set, so I'm learning how to do it, and I'm pretty sure you can too, especially if you're motivated. There's always somebody willing to help if you need help. If you get to a place where you don't know what you're doing. There are EAA chapters around the United States, or experimental aircraft associations. They have a wealth of knowledge in there. There's a lot of good people that join those chapters. Pilots, mechanics, people that just want to help and work in their community. So you can get yourself into one of those chapters and get all the help you need. Many people are very happy to help. As soon as you start asking questions about aviation, they might give you more information than you thought you needed. But lots of information out there to help you get along. Will a kit need an FAA inspection? Yes, it will. 40 hours of flight testing afterwards, and 25 hours of flight if you're using an FAA-approved engine and propeller. You also need to do a 51% proof of building, which is easy to do using the logbook that comes with the kit. The Kit Fox, for example, comes with a building log, and as you move through that log, for example, I started on my horizontal stabilizer. As you install the ribs and sand them and epoxy them, there's a checkoff block where you can write in the date and time, check that off, and then move on to the next step. So that's a good way to help you document. This would be another way. I'm doing a little video, especially photos and videos of you yourself, the builder, building the kit. So that's also a good way to prove that you've done it. Is there a list of aircraft that meet this rule, you ask? Yes, there is. I'll add a link to that list in the description below. It's put together by the National Kit Evaluation Team with the FAA. The kit I'm building isn't on the list yet, but after doing a little research, I found an excerpt from John McBean, the president and CEO of Kit Fox, saying that the kit that I'm working on was approved on a letter dated July 21st, 2011, from the manager of the FAA Productions and Airworthiness Division, Terry Allen. How much space is needed to build a kit? If you're just working on small parts at a time, you could do it in a bedroom or a kitchen or something like that. Obviously you need a place to store the fuselage and the wings, and they're pretty long, so I think the wings that I measured in the garage are about 13.5 feet long, so 13.5 feet long. They're 10 inches deep, pretty much about 4 feet tall. I just hung them up on the wall. So a single stall garage or a double stall garage, you can do you could probably build it in a pretty good sized shed in the backyard, or storage unit, local storage unit. I started mine in a local storage unit. It was 10 wide, 12 tall, and 30 feet deep, and that was ample space. I just strung up some lights and started doing what I could until I had a little more permanent place to start working on the airplane. And once you get it in the garage, the fuselage takes up a little bit of space, but it's, you know, it's about 4 foot wide and probably 5 feet tall as it sits on the ground. And I just rested it on some cart movers that you can get down at the local Menards, Home Depot, or Lowe's. They got 4 wheels on them, and it's 4 boards tacked together. Set the fuselage on there, and I can move it around in the garage with ease, so I can push it out of the way or pull it out if I need to work on it. So not a lot of space is really needed. At some point you are going to have to put the wings on the airplane, so having a 2-stall garage I think would be more ideal. If you're still in that storage unit, you can wheel the airplane out front, because more than likely by the time you're putting the wings on, you've got the gear on, so it's already on its own wheels. You're going to push it out front, get some friends over, put those 2 wings on, and with the KitFox, the wings fold, so I can fold those wings back up and slide it right back into the storage container. So that was, again, one of the reasons that I chose the KitFox, is because I like the foldable wing idea, and being able to store it in a garage and not have to take it to a hangar and spend several $100 to store my airplane with somebody else's airplane. There's no risk of damage in my garage. I know if there is damage, that's probably been caused by me. How much time does it take? There's a lot of kits out there, and they vary from 500 to 1,500 hours. The kit I'm working on right now, KitFox estimates 1,000 hours on the build. I did pay for several items that I could get quick built, such as the wing. They put the dihedral in it, they glued in a lot of the ribs. They did an exceptional job. They put the twist in the wing, everything that really was, that I didn't want to do, because it needs to be done well. They do it a lot, and I just wanted to leave that portion to them. I also purchased a materials cutout, basically rotor pedals. There's some other random metal pieces that they pre-cut out. I didn't want to get a block of aluminum in the mail and have to cut my own pieces out of that block of aluminum. That didn't interest me very much. So I think so far everything that I've purchased ahead of time I've saved at least probably 220, 230 hours on. So that leaves 760, 770 hours for me, man hours working on the airplane. So I'm hoping that realistically it's something I can do within a year. And I'm gonna not start as January when the aircraft was delivered to me, but in July when I basically started working on the airplane. So I'm hoping by next July I'm getting really close to the point of covering and painting and doing some test flying. You don't have your pilot's license, you say? Well, don't worry about that. Any appropriately rated pilot can fly your airplane for you during the test phase. A friend, anyone you know who's a rated pilot, can fly your airplane for you. But what not a better time for you to go out and get your own pilot's license while you're waiting on glues to dry. So get some books, download some stuff online, and start studying. Get that license, and by the time that year's up, you'll be ready to go out and do the flight testing on your own. I don't think it's that in depth, but maybe I'll do a video on that as we come around in the future, the 40 hours of flight testing. Again, if 40 hours if you don't go with the FAA's approved propeller and engine. But what does that entail? I know right now it's basically stall speeds, best glide configurations, etc., best climb. But again, I'll get more in depth on that in the future, and I'll do another video on that. So another good reason to build your own airplane is maintenance and repairs. You or any competent person can do the maintenance on your airplane. It's a little bit different when it comes to a certificated airplane. On the mall, for example, I could change the oil, but I still required a sign-off by my A&P mechanic. So was I saving a little bit of money? Yes, but overall he's got to be there anyway to sign off on it, so I'm paying him to be there. Whereas on this airplane, you can do the oil changes yourself, you can pay for the oil, the filter, you can do the wire tying, all that stuff that you need to do. You can do it on your own and save yourself a little bit of money. Also, for replacement parts, you're not relying on exactly getting a FAA certified part that might cost you $600 for, let's say, an alternator. just because it's got an FAA stamp on it when you go down to the auto parts store and maybe you find a Honda alternator that goes in there and it costs you 60 bucks. If it works and it keeps you safe and it fits in the airplane, that's your ultimate goal, because your life is in your own hands. So I myself want to be safe, so I'm going to try to put the best part in I can. But in this case, it doesn't necessarily have to be FAA approved, so you're going to save some money there. Just putting the spark plugs in my Maul, I think there were 8 of them. So without knowing at the time, I had a bad spark plug, and the mechanic asked me, do you want to replace one or all 8? And I said, well, let's do all 8. Well, then I found out just a little bit later that they were about $38 a piece. So 38 times 8 was much more than I had in my mind as an idea of something you're going to spend. So I'm hoping that I can save a little bit on those costs in the future. And a lot of people who build kits are concerned about costs. I am concerned about costs also. That's why I chose this kit, because it's more affordable. But it also fit the type of aircraft that I was interested in: the 2-seaters, the folding wings, the tail dragger, and the big tires. That's what I was looking for. So this airplane fit me. It might not fit you, but that's something that you need to figure out before you get to the buying phase. How old can I be to fly? So I mentioned earlier that I'd come back to that. Well, there's no limit on taking classes. You can be 10 years old and you can go out and take classes with a certified instructor. There's nothing wrong with that. However, there's a few caveats. In order to go solo, you're going to have to be 16 years of age, and to get your private pilot's license, you'll need to be 17 years of age. Now, if you're building your own kit and you're 15 or 16 years old, I would say you're ahead of the curve, and good on you. If it's going to take you a year, excellent time to start studying. Go glue something together in the garage, give it 24 hours to dry, and while you're in there, go out and take some flight lessons. And in a year, when your plane's ready to be air tested, you're going to be the one who can go out and do that. You don't have to rely on somebody else to go out and get those numbers for you and build your flight manual. So I want to thank everybody for watching today. If you like what you've seen and heard, please comment below. I need some ideas for future videos. If you haven't already, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell for notifications. Again, I'm learning as I go here, so I do watch a lot of YouTube, but it seems like I forget to say those things from time to time. So stay tuned to the King Fox channel. On the next episode, we're going to talk about ordering and costs for my kit. So see you on the next one. Have a great day. Bye-bye.